There are no wrong answers. You can get better. If you try not to get rejected, you will get rejected more.
For startups hiring engineers and engineers looking to join them, this podcast is for you.
Welcome to Your Next Tech Startup. Today's episode is about rejection, and I will be speaking with Mark, who was on a previous episode, Can You Thrive in an Early Stage Startup? We are not going to be talking about being rejected. We're actually talking about what happens during the interview process when you're in fear of rejection and what's possible when you choose to let go of that fear and be yourself. So, Mark, let's kick it off.
To start off, I just want to say thanks for having me back, Isabel. It was fun last time, and I'm looking forward to our second round. The story here was this was probably over a decade ago, but I was interviewing sort of back-end engineering role, and I was at the technical screen round. I had come in person for this one, and I was in a conference room with an engineer, and they told me, go up to the whiteboard. Here is a kind of application with these certain constraints. Draw an architecture diagram for what you think you would build. And so, went up to the whiteboard, drew a database, drew a front-end server through application servers. So I don't even remember the exact constraints they gave me. The thing I do remember was the scenario they gave me sounded a lot like an application that this startup might be building for a part of one of their features. Okay. And I did what I thought was the best architecture for the thing they said. And the engineer was about to move on to another set of questions. And I asked him before we did, I said, hey, this sounds a lot like a thing you might build. Is this sort of like representative of the kind of problems or things you build here? And he said, yeah, this is actually like a thing we built and shipped last year. And I was curious. Whenever you do an interview question, it's always like a slimmed down version of a real world problem just from time constraints. But I'd be curious, like, what other constraints were there? And that started probably a 40-minute conversation about what the more detailed into the issues they face. And, he didn't ask me to extend that diagram. I just started doing that. I was like, oh, so you did this and I'll draw this here. And then he would say, actually, we did it slightly differently. And at a certain point I said, oh, why don't you come up here and show me what you did? And he got up, walked up to the whiteboard, and started drawing on the whiteboard. And I started asking him, like, oh, okay, well, how do you deal with this thing failing? And how do you deal with if you have extra load in this point? And sort of, we had this really nice conversation where I think I showed this great side of myself because from the questions that I asked, yeah. I also showed curiosity and interest. And I think people always love when you express curiosity and interest in them. But the funny thing is we got to the top of the hour and he looked at the clock and then he looked at the whiteboard and he realized, I've been standing at the whiteboard longer than you have. And I said, I hope that's okay. This was a really interesting conversation. He said he thought it was too. Mm-hmm. And we kind of had a laugh about the fact that he ended up doing most of the whiteboard diagramming. Mm-hmm. If I was afraid of doing poorly, I wouldn't have the space to sort of feel curiosity. I wouldn't have felt comfortable saying, how would you have done this? I wouldn't have felt I would be, if I was focused on how do I make this interviewer happy? Yeah. I wouldn't have inquired about how they did it because that doesn't seem like a thing that would make someone happy. Right. I did it because I cared and I was curious and he enjoyed it. We both enjoyed it.
Right. And on the interviewer, I want to focus on that he enjoyed it. So on the interviewer side, I think they're not like an interviewer is not walking away like, did this person make me happy? I think they're walking away from it as, does this person demonstrate that they have the technical skill to add mm-hmm. value to the team? And unfortunately, the typical interview format isn't as conversational a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. But you were able to flip it to become more conversational so that they were still able to walk away with the feeling, this is someone who has the understanding, is able to like think through these problems and add value. And that's really what their goal is. Their goal isn't like domination of like the interview format, or did they make me happy or whatever. Like they just want to work with smart, cool people.
And I think the dominant format for technical interviews does not necessarily give people the opportunity to showcase that they are a smart, cool person. I actually personally think like the questions someone asks are more revealing than the answer they give to your questions, because it says more about where their headspace is. And I think if you can get an interview to be where to a point where you are asking as many questions as the interviewer is, I think you actually have a better opportunity of expressing that, of expressing of where your headspace is, what you think about, what do you gravitate towards, what concerns you, what excites you. But the important thing to
Jumping on
do.
that for one sec, that like you asking the questions, I will say, I've read thousands and thousands of feedback forms for technical interviews, and probably one of the top 3, possibly definitely top 5, is they didn't ask questions.
And I want to call out, not everyone will be.
Yeah.
Not everyone will be as flexible, and that's okay. So coming back to our earlier point about rejection being part of the process of interviewing, if you try to not get rejected, you will act differently and give different answers to questions than if you tried to get hired by the right people. And the right people for you is going to be different than the right people for me, than different from many other answers. This is the distinction between like, are you trying to impress every potential partner, or are you trying to impress the partners who would be good for you, who you'd enjoy spending time with and spending your life with? I'd rather go in assuming the person is going to collaborate and being my best self, and get rejected by someone who doesn't like that I ask questions. Because the people who say they didn't ask questions, those people are going to be really excited when they talk to me. I don't believe in wrong answers, especially talking about sort of senior talent. If you've been in the industry for 10 years and you're good at what you do, there are no wrong answers. There are less applicable answers to certain environments. There are styles that don't work, that clash with the culture of a specific organization. That doesn't make the answer wrong. I think often people try to figure out what is the culture here and what kind of answer should they have. No. What is your answer to the question? And if they don't like it, oh well. Because you're going to be a lot happier at an organization that likes your answer that's true to you.
Yeah.
And you're going to give a better answer if you're honest with yourself about what you think, than if you try to please the person asking the question.
Yeah, I think when I read people giving the wrong answer in technical interviews, it's a hard one because I don't understand it well enough to like have an opinion on the answer. But
Can I clarify that a little bit?
yeah,
I'm talking about senior people. There are junior
Yeah.
people who give a flat out wrong answer. They lack
but
experience. They don't have technical acumen.
yeah,
But if we're
I've
talking,
read this feedback on people with 20 plus years experience that they're just like, how were they? Or in the debrief meeting, I've watched a principal engineer and a VP of engineering talk. I can't pull specifics right now, but talk about like something that it was just like, I can't believe that they would think about it that way. And whenever I'm listening to these conversations, I'm wondering, did the person try to pretend to know more than they actually knew? And I think one of the things that is necessary in interviewing is to just say when you don't know something and then effectively redirect the conversation to something that you do know. Or, like you said in that example, of, oh, well, there must have been other things going on here that change the requirements. And so, so when you don't know something, going into a place of like curiosity and questioning and learning and taking 5 minutes to do that, I think is going to be a lot more of an effective way to be successful in a technical interview and to be yourself in a technical interview than to like bullshit some kind of answer because you're freaking out at the moment that you maybe don't have the right answer.
Well, I mean, I'm going to say, I strongly believe that if we're talking about very senior people who are accomplished, you do occasionally run into someone who you are like, I don't think this person could tape two sticks together, let alone build a piece of software. I think that's actually incredibly rare. What I do see a ton of is wildly different values, where someone comes from organizations that have one set of values and they're interviewing with an organization that has a wildly different set of values. And that easily explains something like, I can't believe they would even think about it that way. That is a
You
thing.
say values like, because these are like very technical, like scenarios that they're talking through. And so it's like, so it's values related to how you solve technical problems.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There are schools of thought on a lot of things, and they tend to correlate with certain industries or also certain stages of companies' growth. Like the values of how to do engineering at a Fortune 500 company are going to be wildly different than at a Series A startup. They're going to be wildly different. That doesn't necessarily make them wrong. They might make them, you might not like those values. You might not like working at a job that has that value, but it doesn't necessarily make them wrong. If you wildly disagree with the values underpinning the answers I give, well, I probably dodged a bullet. It probably wouldn't be good for me to work here. The takeaway for me here is, as a candidate, don't internalize the rejection.
Yeah.
People often say, they rejected me. Well, maybe what they did was rejected the sort of cultural experience you have across several different engineering teams. That's not you. Talking about rejection being part of the process, I think a large reason people do a lot of what they do and experience the concern and the fear they have over being rejected is because it feels very personal. And the like core point I would make is it's not. And it doesn't need to be. Even if they say, I reject you, even if they tell you you're bad, well, I mean, that's one person's opinion. And you've probably dodged a bullet. If someone is that crappy to you in an interview, it's only going to get worse while you work there.
If the person who's interviewing you is not building rapport, kind of throwing questions at you that feel there's only one right answer, what can you do to, I want to say, like, peacefully survive that interview? I don't know.
So one thing I do is I often, when someone asks me a question, is I ask them, so can you give me a sense of what you're trying to get out of this question?
Yeah.
You know, just like, are you trying to establish, I want to orient my answer around what you're looking to understand about me. So there's a skill I've, in my line of work, that is getting people to talk. So as a fractional VP of engineering, I often get brought in to evaluate teams, and I need to get teams to talk. And there's a really valuable skill, which is, how do you ask questions that people will answer? And how do you get people to start talking? This is a thing you can practice. This is the thing you can get better at. And so if someone's asked me, like, what is the runtime of merge sort, which is, in my opinion, a pointless question. It is a trivia thing. I can look it up on Wikipedia pretty well. But if someone asks me it, and I am engaged in this organization and I do want to do well, I might ask, I'm curious about what you would get out of my answer to this. Do you think you can help me understand sort of your frame of reference for this question? And there's an important thing to ask it in a way that is not like, this is a stupid question.
Yeah.
It's important to ask the question in a way that assumes good intent, that assumes, that doesn't put the person on their back feet. Do I think everyone can do it? Do I think everyone needs to sort of be able to deal with every potential terrible interviewer that comes their way? I don't think you need to do that. I think if you can make your progress with a large chunk of them, I mean, if we were to say that like 50% of interviews are terrible, well, if you're less worried about doing poorly, then you're going to do really well with those people.
So let's say 10 minutes into the interview, and this is a 60-minute technical interview, in your head, you're just like, oh my God, they're asking like ridiculous questions. Like, this person seems like someone I would never want to work with. There's two ways that like you can take that interview with being in the mindset that you're not afraid of rejection. So one way could be, hey, I appreciate the questions that you're asking. They don't feel very like relevant or important to the work that I would be doing. So I'm going to choose to bow out of this interview, and then you get whatever 40 minutes of your time back. I think people rarely do that. But like if 10 minutes in, you're kind of like, I probably don't want to work here, but I have 40 minutes to practice interviewing. Like kind of you just
That's a great mindset. Is ultimately, like, if you were to ask me, what do I think you should do in that situation? I don't think it matters. Like, if you've already decided this isn't for you, you could sit there for 40 minutes and sort of treat it like a series of brain teasers and try to get enjoyment out of it. You could check out. You could say, I don't know, and see what they do. You could, as you've said, say, I don't think this is relevant, so I'm going to stop. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at that point. But I do like your idea. I think it is a great opportunity to practice dealing with someone who is not there to look for you to succeed. Because I do want to also call out that every time it feels like someone doesn't want you to succeed, maybe they do. You know, like, people exist on a spectrum, and they're not a bad guy. And I think it's a useful exercise. Again, I talked about being comfortable with that discomfort. And one of the best ways you can get comfortable with discomfort is to put yourself in that situation. And that's a great opportunity where if you've decided you don't want this role, you have a zero stakes opportunity to practice.
And like when you're practicing, the things that you're practicing would be asking questions, like not, kind of, I don't want this job right now. I have 40 minutes to practice interviewing. I need to get better at engaging the interviewer. So let me see if I can engage this person. Like that could be like a goal that you could come at it. I'm trying to think of like another, like, again, 10 minutes in, I don't want this job. I still have 40 minutes for the interview. What is like another like approach as a candidate to managing the rest of that interview besides like asking them questions?
Well, maybe you could just go through it the way they want to do it and experience that. And one of the things you can do is you can just go with the flow and experience it. And rather than trying to answer the questions as best as possible, paying attention to yourself. How does it feel when you don't know the answer? What is that like? Where does it manifest it? Do you feel something in the pit of your stomach? Does your chest get tight? Engaging with that experience, understanding what it's like, you will have that experience again in the future. And the next time you have it, you'll be like, okay, I've been here before. I got out of it. I survived.
Right.
It's not fun, but I survived. I'll be okay now. And if you do that enough times, you might actually thrive through that. You're 10 minutes in. They've asked you to stand up to the whiteboard. You hate going up to the whiteboard. You've already decided this place sucks. Walk up to the whiteboard, grab a marker, look at the interviewer and say, give me like 2 minutes. I want to think about this. And don't think about it. Feel what you're feeling. Then think about it.
Yeah. I feel like this has turned into like a how to therapy yourself out of a shitty interview. But
I mean, I can't say it's not, but
yeah, but I mean, I think it's such a, because this isn't I think that is like at the core. This isn't about how good you are as an engineer. It's about how uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
interviewing can feel
Mm-hmm.
and how to try to get back into yourself.
And the way I know that's true is the number of barely employable, completely unqualified people who have no problem with this process, and highly qualified, highly engineers I respect, who I would go to bat for to get hired, who experience this despite all those qualifications and abilities. This has
Yeah.
nothing to do with your skills as an engineer, and has everything to do with what you experience in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I have often said liars get hired. Um and I it's that like I can do it. I've done it. I'll be great at it. Like, and that kind of mentality helps people feel comfortable about hiring you. It's not a good
Mm-hmm.
hire. Whereas the rest of us, like, that's incredibly uncomfortable, and you get caught up in your head and wanting to figure it out and demonstrate your strengths, and oftentimes it's so easy to bomb that when you're actually really good at what you do.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, being good at what you do doesn't have that much of an impact on being good or being bad at engaging in an interview. Like I feel like they're loosely correlated at best.
Yeah.
And the good thing is you can get better.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does require rethinking your relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you implicitly believe that a rejection on an interview is a rejection of you, this will always be hard. So there was I'm gonna butcher this blog post, but OkCupid, the dating website,
Uh-huh.
had a tech blog for a while called OK Trends, and they had a post about um, controversial people find love the fastest. It was a realization that people with attributes that some people hate but other people love found connections the fastest. So um, full body tattoos. That's a
Okay.
very odd, like, or like many tattoos. That is off putting for a fair number of people, but there are a group of people who probably themselves also have a lot, and they are looking for someone.
Okay.
There's an idea here that if you try to be palatable, no one gets excited about you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I will also say on the dating realm, um, I am a very strong feminist, and don't, especially in the dating world, did not back down uh, much. And it took me much longer to find a husband than any of my friends. Um, so I don't know if I feel like based on OkCupid's theory, I would have found long lasting love and love are, I guess, are two very different things.
I don't
Um,
remember if they were able to show if it was long lasting.
yeah,
It may have just been connection. It may, but and I don't know. This is at least a 15-year-old blog post, but sort of I think this is also advice I give to startups all the time. Is if you describe yourself and no one can say no, that's not for me,
oh, yeah,
then you haven't really described yourself.
yeah, yeah. I try to do that all the time in
Mm-hmm.
interviewing. Is like, I think there is this like, this could be the right role for you because of this, but this could also not be the right role for you because of
Mm-hmm.
this. So what you're saying is kind of like, we think of that like helping the company stand out, but it's also like as a candidate,
Mm-hmm.
like being comfortable with, I am the right person for this. I'm not the right person for this. And if you are the right person for everything, then oftentimes you feel like you're not the right person for anything. And I think sadly, a lot of people who are fear based interviewing right now are trying to be the right person for everything, and as a result being the wrong person for everything.
If you like, this is like this the Swift Army analogy. If you can do everything for everyone,
Yeah.
you're not great for anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, and I think that being great and clear on what you're great at, and being comfortable not being great at everything, and demonstrating that in an interview will lead to more success than you realize.
And I think a lot of people index on this as, oh, well, I'm great at all these technologies. And I think to some degrees, you can be great in certain environments
Yeah.
and poor in other ones.
Yeah.
And it's not even necessarily like a skill thing. It's a fit thing. You can be great at a lot of things, and you can be a generalist, and there will still be environments that you are terrible fit for, and that's okay. And that will probably come up in the interview implicitly. No one will probably say it, but it will probably come up implicitly. You'll be able to figure it out on your own. But if you're stuck in the reptile brain of, I have to impress these people, you're going to miss it. And then you're going to get rejected. And then you're going to feel like you were rejected.
I think these are all like incredibly great points. I really hope that for people who are interviewing right now and are dealing with rejection, that after listening to everything that you've shared, that they can become more comfortable with rejection and better at interviewing. So
I hope so too.
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit of a rough time out there, but that's part of the process. And if you try not to get rejected, you will get rejected more.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. And think about other parts of your life. Like you gave the dating analogies. Like people should think about kind of different areas of their life where they're the one doing the rejecting, or times in their life when they've been doing the rejecting, and why they're rejecting, and utilize that to kind of have more faith in being yourself through the process. With all of that said, this has been, again, a wonderful conversation. I plan to, I know I've told you that you should do your own podcast, but you said no, so you're just going to be on mine every once in a while. So I appreciate that.
Happy to have me back anytime you're interested.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.